In 2010, the United States Marine Corps shipped a weapon to Afghanistan that had taken 20 years and tens of millions of dollars to build. It could clear a hostile crowd from 1,000 meters away without firing a single bullet. It left no visible damage. It killed no one. Within 6 months, it was quietly packed up, loaded back onto a transport plane, and shipped home. The Pentagon never explained why. That weapon still exists. It's still operational, and it's only one of the systems the American military has built, tested, and put into service that most civilians have never heard of. A few of these you've maybe seen flashes of on the news. Most you haven't. Some don't appear in any unclassified press release at all, only in budget line items buried in defense appropriations bills nobody reads. They aren't science fiction. They aren't prototypes locked in a hangar in Nevada. They've been delivered to operational units. Some are sitting with regular Army soldiers and Marines as you watch this. Here are 5 of them. A quick note before we start. When you hear hidden weapons, your brain probably jumps to UFOs, plasma rifles, the stuff conspiracy YouTube has been selling for 30 years. That's not what this is. Everything on this list is real, fielded, and publicly acknowledged in some form. The word hidden means something more specific. These are weapons the Pentagon spent decades developing, billions of dollars deploying, and somehow almost no one outside the defense industry can name. They've been hidden in plain sight. And once you understand what they actually do, you start to see why nobody's been advertising them. We're counting down from 5. Starting at number 5 is a rifle, just a rifle, which sounds underwhelming until you realize the Army hasn't replaced its standard infantry weapon in roughly 60 years. The M16 entered service in Vietnam. The M4 carbine, which most American soldiers carried for the next 2 decades of war, is essentially a shorter M16. Same caliber, same basic operating system, same 5.56mm round design in the late 1950s. In April of 2022, the Army announced that was over. The new rifle is called the XM7. It's manufactured by Sig Sauer. And the reason it matters has nothing to do with the gun itself. It has to do with the bullet. The 5.56 round the M4 fires was built for a specific era. Light, fast, designed to wound rather than kill, easy to carry hundreds of rounds. It worked in jungles. It worked in deserts. But against modern body armor, the kind being mass-produced and exported by major rival militaries, the 5.56 has been losing effectiveness for years. Pentagon studies were quietly documenting this for over a decade before anyone did anything about it. The XM7 fires a 6.8mm round at chamber pressures roughly twice what a normal rifle generates. The case isn't even regular brass. It's a hybrid steel and brass design, specifically because regular brass can't survive the pressure. The result is a rifle round that punches through armor most modern infantry weapons can't touch. The Army hasn't said this part loudly, but the math is straightforward. Body armor that reliably stops a 5.56 round won't reliably stop this one. That's the whole point. The branch is starting with the units most likely to see direct ground combat first. Infantry, cavalry scouts, combat engineers. The rest will follow. It's a quiet revolution, a new rifle with a new round designed for a war the Pentagon already thinks is coming. Number 4 isn't carried, it's launched. Imagine a tube about the size of a small camping mat, weighing roughly 5 pounds. A single soldier carries it on patrol. When something goes wrong, When an enemy position is identified beyond rifle range, the soldier opens the tube, sets the device on the ground, and presses launch. What flies out looks like a model airplane. It isn't. It's called a Switchblade, and once it's in the air, the operator can fly it for miles, watch a high-definition video feed from a small tablet, and identify a target with their own eyes. Then, when they're ready, they tell it to dive. The drone has explosives in the nose. It crashes into whatever the operator selected, detonating on impact. The smallest version, the Switchblade 300, is designed for personnel and light vehicles. A larger version, the Switchblade 600, can punch through the armor of a main battle tank from above, where tank armor is thinnest. Because the operator is watching the live feed the entire time, they can abort up to the last second. If a child walks into frame, they pull the drone away. If they've misidentified the target, they veer off. It's a missile that lets you change your mind. These have been quietly distributed to American Army units for years, and they were sent in large numbers to Ukraine starting in 2022. That's actually where most people first heard of them. The footage of Russian armor being destroyed by what looked like a hobbyist drone wasn't an accident. It was the first real combat advertisement of a system the Pentagon had been holding on to. The implications are still rolling out. A weapon that fits in a backpack, costs a tiny fraction of a precision missile, and can take out a tank means the infantry soldier has, for the first time in modern history, organic deep strike capability. The squad doesn't need to call in artillery. The squad is the artillery. Number 3 is a Striker, the 8-wheeled armored vehicle the Army has been driving around combat zones for over 2 decades. From the outside it looks normal, the same boxy hull, the same wheels. But where the standard variant has a turret, this one has a beam director. The vehicle is officially called the Directed Energy Maneuver Short-Range Air Defense System, which is the kind of name only a defense contractor could invent. The soldiers call it the DEM SHORAD. It's a tank with a laser cannon. The laser is 50 kilowatts. To give you a sense of scale, a surgical laser used for eye correction surgery is about 10 watts. This is roughly 5,000 times more powerful, focused into a beam, mounted on a vehicle that can keep pace with an armored brigade. The first combat-capable units were delivered to the Army in 2022. They're meant to shoot down drones, rockets, mortar shells, and artillery rounds in flight. Anything cheap and small that conventional missile defense can't economically engage. Because the laser doesn't have ammunition in the traditional sense, as long as the vehicle has fuel, it has shots. The strategic problem this solves is huge. Enemy forces, both state and non-state, figured out that swarming American positions with cheap drones is one of the most effective tactics available. A $200 quadcopter forces the response of a $100,000 missile. The math worked against the United States for years. A directed energy weapon flips it. The laser shot costs roughly the price of a few gallons of gasoline. The drone still costs $200 to the enemy. Now the economics favor the defender. Once that capability is widespread, the cheap drone swarm strategy that's dominated modern warfare for the past 5 years starts to die. If you find this kind of thing fascinating, the strange real edge of American military tech, that's what we cover here every week. Subscribe so you don't miss the next one. Number 2 takes the same problem the striker laser is solving and answers it differently. The laser is precise. It picks one target, burns through it, picks the next. Fast, but still one at a time, which means if the enemy sends 50 drones at once, even a fast laser can be overwhelmed. The solution sitting at number 2 doesn't pick targets, it hits everything at once. The system is called Thor, which stands for Tactical High Power Operational Responder. It was developed by the Air Force Research Laboratory and tested in Africa starting around 2019. There's also a related Army-bound system called Leonidas, built by a different contractor. They work on the same principle. The principle is high-powered microwaves, not the kind that heats food. These are concentrated bursts of radio frequency energy broadcast in a cone in front of the system that fry the electronics of anything in that cone. Every drone in the beam path simultaneously loses its motors, its cameras, its radios, its navigation. The drones don't get shot down. They drop, because every electronic component inside them is dead. A single pulse can disable a swarm. The system doesn't track targets individually. It paints an area, and everything electronic in that area stops working at the same instant. What makes this entry on the list especially interesting is what's left out of the public conversation about it. The official statements focus on the anti-drone application, but the underlying technology, broadcasting microwaves powerful enough to destroy unshielded electronics, has obvious other uses. Disabling the electronics of a vehicle, shutting down a communications relay, knocking out the ignition of equipment in a wide radius. The military is not discussing those applications publicly. They don't have to. The same hardware that disables a drone in front of it can, in principle, disable anything else with vulnerable circuits in front of it, which is most things now. Which brings us back to the weapon we opened with. Number 1 is the system that landed in Afghanistan in 2010, sat there for 6 months, and was shipped home without firing a shot. It's called the Active Denial System, ADS for short. The unofficial name everyone in the Pentagon uses is the heat ray. The way it works is genuinely strange. The system generates a beam of millimeter wave radio energy in the 95 gigahertz range and projects it from a parabolic dish mounted on top of an armored vehicle. When the beam touches human skin, it penetrates roughly 0.04 of a millimeter, which is shallower than a sheet of paper. At that depth, the water molecules in the outer layer of skin start vibrating, and the skin temperature spikes to around 130 degrees Fahrenheit in about 2 seconds. The sensation, by the testimony of the soldiers and contractors who've been hit with it in trials, is the worst pain they've ever felt. It feels exactly like being on fire. The instinctive reaction, every time, without exception, is to flee. People can't override it. Even people who know intellectually that the beam isn't burning them, that they aren't actually on fire, that the moment they step out of the beam the sensation will stop completely, still cannot stand there and take it. The body's threat response is too primitive, too deep. The beam reaches out to roughly 1,000 meters. It can clear a crowd, control a perimeter, repel an assault, all without anyone dying, and according to the testing data, without lasting injury. Step out of the beam, the pain stops. Step out, you're fine. So why was it pulled out of Afghanistan in 2010, unused? Officially, the reason was operational caution. Unofficially, the answer has more to do with optics. A weapon that causes invisible, severe pain in non-combatants that leaves no visible mark has a public relations problem that no general wants to be responsible for. The system stayed in inventory. It still does. The Marine Corps still trains on it. The Pentagon still budgets for it. And every few years, somebody quietly proposes deploying it again, and somebody else quietly says, not yet. Of every weapon on this list, this is the one that's been ready, fielded, and operationally capable the longest. It's also the one nobody can bring themselves to use. That's the strange thing about looking at this list end to end. None of these are theoretical. Every single system on it has been delivered to American units in some form. Every one of them has been tested, debugged, fielded, and folded into existing doctrine. The hidden part isn't the existence. The hidden part is the scale. The next conventional war the United States fights, against any opponent capable of pushing back, is going to be shaped by weapons most Americans have never heard of, many of which were developed 2 presidential administrations ago and have been sitting in storage. Here's the question worth thinking about. Of the 5 on this list, which one would you actually want a future enemy to face first? The rifle? The drone? The laser? The microwave? Or the heat ray? Let me know.